Thank you for tuning in. I'm Korenn, and if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you go ahead and hit that button. And in this video, I want to talk about Vegan Cooking 101. And this is pertaining specifically towards the mock meats. And this is using both vital wheat gluten as well as gluten-free techniques. And I want to make sure that you're grasping the concept of just my way of thinking as far as when I'm in the kitchen. That way, when you recreate these recipes or even create your own, you are completely successful. Let's get started. Texture. So for texture, you notice I used a lot of mushrooms in my mock meat. This is the king oyster mushroom. And the king oyster mushroom, this little piece here at the bottom is going to be the rubberiest part. The top here is always going to be the most tender. The middle is a bit woody, and that's ideal for shredding. And so you see that's here. And if you're making a ceviche or anything with conch in specific, you definitely want to hold on to those bottom pieces. They are the most ideal. The texture is chewy and it's almost identical. I would say identical to what a conch would be. All right, and moving forward, you can also use the button mushrooms, roasted and chopped or sliced. So you want to keep in mind texture whenever you're creating any type of mock meat, because if it feels good on the tongue, more than likely it's going to be a really good experience no matter whoever's eating it. And so here I have some rice paper, and you'll notice I use rice paper as skin for a lot of the mock meats, and you can see here the texture. It's somewhat gelatinous. You can see how squishy it is, and this is only having added water. This is not having been cooked. So this is a really, really great addition to whatever mock meats that you're using. And this is an example here. I'm using the rice paper first, and then I go on top with this bean curd. It is soy. It does come from soy. Excuse me. And essentially, when you cook it, it gets this really, really crispy skin-like texture. It's ideal if that's what you're looking for. And so here we go. Here's the vital wheat gluten. I've spoken about this many times before. Vital wheat gluten. Gluten is just the protein inside of flour. Bread flour in specific, I believe, has a protein content of about somewhere from 9% to 11%. I'm not totally sure. I have to double check on that. And so even when you're making your bread doughs for any of your baked recipes, and this is what I have here. I believe this was for donuts. But when you knead the dough over and over again, what you're doing is taking that 9% of protein, that gluten, and you're connecting it. You're bringing it together so it can form these long strands, and it gives structure to your bread doughs. So that way you have a better concept of the activity or what gluten does inside of the different products or inside of the different creations. So I have here some vital wheat gluten, and I've added baking powder. Baking powder in this application breaks up those really long gluten strands. As you can see here, how it stretched and it pulled right apart, and baking powder really, really helps out with that. And I have the rice paper and some chopped button mushrooms. And all that is several different textures, and it feels amazing on the tongue. And then, of course, we have the rice paper as the mock skin. It really helps out, especially if you are roasting or with any application. The mock rice paper skin is amazing in my opinion. So here I'm using chickpea flour. In this application, I have the vital wheat gluten right on top, and I'm making the corned beef here. The idea of not mixing in the vital wheat gluten and the chickpea flour is once I add in the liquid, it creates a marbling effect throughout the corned beef. And here's another example. When I made the oxtails, I have several different layers of textures, and it translates as almost the real thing on the palate. So long as you flavor it properly, there's going to be absolutely no issue. I don't want to say issues, but it's going to be amazing, I should just say, especially if you're new to veganism or if you cook for a lot of meat eaters. And so this was a technique that I used, is essentially with the different textures here, a marbling effect, a fat marbling effect. So you can do that, you can create that in your own kitchen, and it's really simple. And so here, this is for my braised beef short ribs. And for texture in this application, I'm using the mushrooms as well, the king oyster mushrooms. It's a nickname, tree mushrooms is the nickname, but the official name is king oyster mushrooms. There it is. And so what I'm doing here is, as I knead the dough, I didn't mix it. I didn't overmix it. I softly mixed the dough because I knew I would be kneading it on the surface with the mushrooms in it. So as you knead the dough, what you're doing is reconnecting or connecting those different gluten strands. The same thing you notice people do inside of a bread dough, a standard bread dough using regular wheat flour. And so this is an example here of how it looks. This is the short rib when it's cold, and it shreds apart, and the texture is just like meat. In this application, I'm using the vital wheat gluten and the baking powder to break up those long gluten strands. And if you've caught my other recipe, it is the sausage. Excuse me. I didn't get any footage of the sausage in here, but if you look at how I made the sausage and the end texture, that's what vital wheat gluten looks like when there's nothing breaking it up. It's just a really, really tightly bonded mock meat. Here I'm making the vegan chicken. I believe this is the chicken thighs. And I did not add baking powder to this mixture. I added the chickpea flour. And so the end texture of this, when you don't add any baking powder and it's only the mushrooms and the vital wheat gluten, it is almost as if it's easy. It's better for braising, in my opinion. The end texture, it just kind of falls apart, and there's a little bit of a give, I want to say, on the dough. I'll talk more about that on the blog, so make sure you check out the blog post that goes along with this. And moving on to the gluten-free meats. So for the gluten-free, the texture that I'm using in here, along with mushrooms, is brown rice. And you don't want to overcook your brown rice. You want to make sure it's nice and fully cooked, not crunchy at all, but chewy. Chewy is the ideal texture. Once it bakes and the beans set, or whatever mixture that you use, it sets up, everything kind of melds together, and it's really nice on the palate. And so in this application, I'm using potato starch, oat flour, and this is gluten-free. And the potato starch and oat flour gives a really, really tight bond to this dough. And here I have a bit of my seasoning mix that I added. And to this, these are some portobello mushrooms that I've roasted, and as well as some brown rice. Once you cook this, once this bakes, this is just texture city. Nothing's crunchy, everything's just really nice, everything just flows. Nothing's mushy. It's really, really nice on the palate. I haven't uploaded this recipe yet, but I will be uploading it in the coming days. And this is a gluten-free chicken thigh. And I use chickpeas that have not been cooked, but they have been chopped up. And as you can see, look as I cut, or you'll have to see it on the following video, but you can see the texture here. It's very meat-like. So moving forward to flavoring is extremely important. You can have the texture down, but if the flavor's off, it kind of like defeats the amount of work that you put inside of building those really awesome textures for whatever mock meat that you're trying to recreate or trying to create on your own. So these are some of the spices that I use for my corned beef, my vegan corned beef. And you see the flavor profile is identical to what someone would use for a traditional or an animal corned beef. And so I have my bouillon, my different spices, as well as a carrot. Here, moving on, this is for my chicken wings. And I use 2 different types of vegan bouillons. I use 2 different types of vegan bouillons, as well as a splash of fresh lemon. I take my mushrooms that have already been cooked and shredded, I actually cook them, or I infuse those mushrooms with the flavor of this vegan chicken bouillon. And it has like a little bit of the beef bouillon. And for this recipe, I believe this is my jerk. My jerk? Yes. This was for the jerk chicken thighs. I got my spice mixed together. This is what you would use to season or marinate jerk chicken if you're using animal. Here is some caramelized onions. Rather than just adding water or seasoned liquid inside of your Vital Wheat gluten mix, go ahead and caramelize some onions and use some spinach and add some water and liquefy that and use that puree inside of your Vital Wheat gluten. That's more layers of flavor inside of your dish. Here I'm seasoning a quick seitan chicken breast. I have some leeks, my chickenless bouillon I put in first, some spices I use a lot of the hickory liquid smoke. It's one of my favorite spices, chili powder, cayenne, just a variety of different spices. And I dilute all those spices and that goes inside of that. Here I'm flavoring the liquid for my mock kunk, and kelp is just seaweed. And I have the seaweed, I have some sea salt. You didn't see me add in the agave nectar on here because I did it off camera. I'd forgotten to add it because you want a sweet element to this particular mock meat or mock seafood. And that sweet element was the agave nectar. So you got what tastes like the bay, what tastes like fish, or what tastes like the sea. You get that from the kelp and the sea salt. And then you have that sweet element that you add right in there. And that marinates overnight. And here I'm making another seasoning mix. I get started here with some with some frozen spinach. I use vegan Worcestershire sauce in here, garlic powder, onion powder. Here's the Vital Wheat gluten. And if you haven't, make sure you check out my shopping, how I shop vegan. I have that posted over on my blog. Check that out so you can see some of the spices and different things I use in my own kitchen on how to impart just flavor upon flavor and flavor upon flavor in my different dishes. Cooking applications. So I have here's my vegan corned beef, and I'm wrapping this up in some muslin, or it's cheesecloth you also call it, and I'm cooking this right inside of my seasoned cooking liquid. And you can do that with the seitan. Now, it would have been better if this was wrapped tightly. If this was wrapped tighter so that the corned beef did not have space to absorb too much liquid, it would have come out firmer. But if you look at the corned beef, you can see the different spaces, the nooks and crannies, and that's what comes from that marbling effect I talked about with the chickpea flour and the Vital Wheat gluten and not pre-mixing those. You can see more about that on my blog. I have a post of video extras for the corned beef. You want to check that out. I show you more on the corned beef and talk a little bit about gluten and the gluten strands. And moving on, here are some vegan chicken wings. This is another application. You can take the seitan and you fry it. Whereas in the mindset immediately and when you're first starting off cooking vegan and with seitan, is steam it and then use it for whatever it is that you need, or boil it. That's not the case. Here I'm using the seitan dough, or the mock meat dough here, the mock meat mixture with mushrooms and the vital wheat gluten, and I'm braising it, getting a simple pan sear, pulling it out, getting my veggies and different aromatics right inside the pan, and then I return them right into the saute pan, and they braise right inside the liquid, and they come out perfect. So that's another cooking application. Here are my short ribs. Now these did not have to be steamed, but I did steam these. You could have taken these and baked them if you liked. Grilled them as well. But this is the standard way of cooking a mock meat. You steam it first, and if you wanted any other application, you go ahead and impart that second, but that's not the case. You do not have to steam or boil your seitan. You can go with many different cooking applications, as you can see here. Here I have my roast, or my beef roast for my slow cooker. I'm just pan searing it because I wanted it to be a bit more brown before I cooked it. And from here, I have my slow cooker on. It's been on for about an hour, just kind of getting hot with nothing in it. Toss in my vegetables. I don't know if you guys caught it from the video. I did slip in a little bit of butter, vegan butter in there. You can't see it right off, but right when I put the meat in, you see it right there. But in any case, and I cook it inside of the slow cooker. So that's another cooking application. Now it takes a long time. If you're patient enough for the slow cooker, then that's the way you go. But I did it for you guys. I'm not patient enough for that slow cooker on a normal day-to-day basis. And so here's the same cooking application that I used with the oxtails. You go ahead and sear the oxtail, or sear the vegan chicken thighs. And this is the recipe that I use without baking powder and with the chickpea flour. Here, this is the jerked chicken thighs that I used baking powder in this recipe, and so you'll see the texture in that momentarily. And for the skin, I use the rice paper as well as a bit of slivers of potatoes to get a really nice crispy caramelized brown skin. I brush it with some more of the jerk marinade, and this goes right into the oven to finish cooking. And here, this is for ground beef or veggie grounds. I go ahead and steam that. After this is done steaming, pull it off, and I chop this and I use it for whatever cooking application that I need it. In this particular recipe, I used it for chili. So you just chop that up. And these things, especially after they're cooked, you can toss them right in the freezer. I had a seitan mixture in the freezer, or a seitan maple sausage in the freezer for maybe 2 months, and it tastes the exact same, as probably a little bit better than when I put it in. I don't know, something about those flavors sitting and then slowly melding together. I can't really go into the science of that because I don't exactly know, but it did taste better. All right, and as you saw, I made the chili with the veggie grounds. And this is a very, very simple vegan chicken breast. I just used vital wheat gluten. And the only reason why I didn't use anything to break up the strands or anything, or any chickpea flour, anything like that, is because these are going to be sliced very thin for my tamales. If you remember my tamales recipe, I'll have that listed in the link below. I used this chicken breast, or the vegan chicken breast, for one of the fillings. And so I just portioned that, shaped it in the way that I wanted, steamed it, and it was ready to go. I made sure the seasoning was really nice. And it's ready. Now, if this was not being sliced thin, I would recommend go ahead and add something that would break up those gluten strands, because that gluten, it bonds so tightly together that it can get tougher or chewier or more chewy than meat, a normal meat, a meat eater would be used to eating. And so here is another cooking application. This is just baked. I glazed this one, and this is a gluten-free pork loin roast, and baked it, and it was ready. Here are my chicken wings. And steaming is going to be a better method than the submerging your dough or your seitan dough. If you're using the vital wheat gluten, they refer to that as seitan dough. If you're using the vital wheat gluten, steaming is always going to be the better option as opposed to submerging it in the liquid freely. You get a better end product. It's not as soft. It's nice and tight, and it's just really nice. I definitely recommend kind of experimenting with both. That way you can see for yourself and you know which way you want to go. Presentation. So for here, you want to make sure if you're going for a certain mock meat recipe, you just want to make sure it looks like what you're displaying or what you're calling it. Because if it doesn't look like it, I don't want to say it takes away from the experience of eating it, but it doesn't add to it. It adds to the experience when something looks familiar to what you're used to eating and it tastes familiar or even better. So for here, these are just some different examples of presentation on how I present the different mock meats. I do try to mimic things that people or meat eaters, non-vegans, are used to, are more familiar with. The reason why I do that is to make them familiar. Hey, you can have that same exact thing, taste the same way, taste even better, and it's vegan. It's good for you and it's good for the environment. And so that's why I do it in this way. And so far it's been really successful. People seem to be enjoying it. And so I think presentation is very important, especially depending on who you're cooking for. It's different if you're at home. And this is, just take a look at that meat there for the jerk chicken. You see the texture's different, and that is with the baking powder. I just wanted to point that out there. And moving back to presentation, it just looks familiar. It's more appealing to the eye. It's eye-grabbing when it's something familiar and it looks delicious, and they can immediately identify it with something that they know. So I definitely recommend you keeping that in mind when it comes to when you cook at home in your kitchen. Even if it's for yourself or it's for your friends or your family, keep presentation in mind before you hit the plate with the food. Have in your mind a concept of kind of how you want it to look. Here's my vegan turkey list. You saw how the presentation of that was just appealing with so many non-vegans. It brought up a curiosity. Well, why would you do something like that? It looks really good. Well, what is veganism? Explain that to me. Why? And then it opens up a new conversation. In any case, I hope this video helped you. I hope you enjoyed it. And I have a few more videos like this coming, so stay tuned. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Before you leave, make sure you go over and check out my Instagram account and go ahead and follow me on Instagram. I would love to see your food pictures, so make sure you tag me in any of your vegan food pictures. And check out some of my other videos. I have a couple linked in the description box below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to share it, and I will see you next time.